What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Facts on the Ground. I'm Misty Winston, joined by my co-host Jesse Zerwell. And today we have a very special guest. He's one of my favorite UK friends. He has his own YouTube show, which is amazing. Everybody should be checking that out. And his name is Gordon Dimmack. Gordon, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's really cool to see you.
It's really cool to see you as well. Thanks so much. That was lovely.
Yeah,
I don't have a YouTube channel anymore, though. I don't upload to my YouTube anymore.
I guess that's true. You have like your own website and emailing list and all that stuff. So yeah, we'll link to all that stuff in the show notes so everybody can find you, because I love watching your stuff. It's literally how I keep informed on UK stuff.
Perfect. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And there's a lot going on in the UK right now, dude. Like, okay, so first of all, I did want to talk to you about the NHS stuff, because that's a hot fucking mess. Okay. Like, as an American, I'm like, what is happening? So, okay, yeah, what's happening? The Tories are fucking things up again.
Well, I mean, when it comes to the NHS, I find it amazing, especially when I talk to my friends across the Atlantic, because obviously you don't have a guaranteed healthcare at the point of service. You don't have that, which is, you're the only westernized country that doesn't have that, and you pay, exorbitant amount of money per person in relation to the rest of the world. And I remember when I had a friend in America who had some health problems and nearly died. And he had to take a job. He was a great singer, actually, but that was his passion. And he was a great singer, fantastic. But he couldn't make enough money doing that, whilst also, getting health insurance as well, because of obviously the problem that he had before. So he had to take a shitty job which had health insurance. So that ties him down to a shitty health insurance thing. And I remember having a conversation with him, and he couldn't quite get how pissed off I was at my NHS at the time, because I remember just before I came over to America and I met him, I had to visit the hospital, and I was really pissed off because when I'd hurt my ankle or something like that, sprained my ankle, hurt it, and I remember going in there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had to pay £4.50 parking on the way out to get my car out. And that really irked me, because we have a system where everybody pays into it and then nobody is left behind. And it's as simple as that. Profit is taken out of it, and everybody is going to be taken care of. And I've never understood the American way of doing things. If you look at statistics, you're not the number one in the world. You're not number one. You're worse when it comes to child birth rate than places in South America. It's crazy that you still go, you kick your government off our healthcare. It's ridiculous. But now we're in a situation where it seems that Boris Johnson and the Tories are selling our NHS off piece by piece to America, and nobody seemingly over here gives a flying shit. I'm not kidding, mister. Nobody seems to give a shit that this is happening. I remember there's a great documentary on, you could get it on YouTube, called The Great NHS Heist. It's by a guy called Dr. Bob Gill. The filmmakers there are excellent as well. Let Me Look at TV was involved. Fantastic. Great group of people who were independent, who couldn't get funding for it because nobody wants to talk about this. Nobody wants to talk about there's the TPP and there's the other whatever, the one that you signed over there. And there's meant to be a third part of the one as well that WikiLeaks was sniffing around, and people are thinking that this was the deal that they've been trying to get with our NHS all along, because we know that what capitalism does, it sucks every basically good resource and every good thing out of a country in order to get the money transferring upwards as fast as possible to these rich bastards who doesn't give a crap about it. Yeah. I was having a conversation about this the other day, Misty. Why do they want everything? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it's psychopathy, obviously. And there's, just a lot of like, they can't get enough. It's sick. Like, it's just really sick. It's disturbing that. And these are the people we elevate to positions of power. And it's mind boggling to me that this is acceptable.
But like I say, nobody seems to give a shit about it over here. And
that's
honestly,
depressing.
I've been banging my head against the brick wall for now for 4 or 5 years. And I'm starting to see where people were 4 or 5 years ago when I was coming into this with my head on fire and my hair on fire, going, And everybody was like, yeah, it's really like this. And you sort
I mean,
of
do
get
they
numb
need
to it all.
do they need to speak to a bunch of Americans? Do we need to have like an intervention so that people will start to give a shit about the fact that they're selling off your healthcare system? Because I mean, right now, currently, I have an infected tooth. It's going to cost me $892 out of pocket to get it fixed, and that's insanity. Like, that's completely insane. You can't, like, you were complaining about parking, dude. We can't even like make an appointment without making like a prepayment. You know what I mean? Or like they have to make sure that you have insurance and that you're able to pay. It's
What was that for? What was that for? What was the tooth? What you haven't doing? What you haven't done?
I have to get a root canal. And
So
so I have
a root canal over here, if you, for instance, if you're on benefits over here, which I am, I don't, nobody gets any money in independent media. If you get government help, especially during COVID times, you know, if you get government help, you are guaranteed health over here, and it does include your teeth to a certain degree. I know my teeth are not great, they really aren't, but last time I had a problem, I phoned up. I don't have a dentist because I don't look after my teeth, but I think I was out of work. It's about 4 years ago. I was out of work 5 years ago, just before I did this, and it cost me, I think, £38, and that was to have a load of fillings done. And that was the only thing you have to pay for is the prescription fee for the NHS. That's what it was. And it was a course of things. And if you can't afford to pay that, you just sign the thing at the bottom to say, I really can't afford this, I'm desperate. And, you know, there are people that try and take advantage of it. It's not like that this doesn't get taken advantage, but for most people that you meet in this country, people think that. People think, oh, the immigrants are going to come, they're going to take advantage. It's not like that at all. It really isn't. For the most part, British people over here, I know, will wait until the last second before they want to go to the doctors because they know how important the NHS is. You know, people can go blind and it's like, oh, it's okay, I'll be all right. So I'll wait for it to go. We'll get through to the afternoon. It's okay, you know? And they don't want to go to the hospital or doctors because we know how important and precious it is, and we know how underfunded it is as well. If they do try and sell it off to America, and you know the public over here get wind of it, who knows what's going to happen? Whether people will fight for it, but it's whether the public are going to get wind of it, Misty. The government control all the avenues of
information
that you get, and you know the ones that they don't, Facebook and YouTube, they do now. They didn't 4 years ago when I first started this. They didn't. They were clamping down on it. But now it's just got to the stage where they're just suffocating indie media to the point where, I mean, Google are just wiping entire websites off their search. You know, if you go to one of the reasons why I just went F YouTube in the end. I'm sorry, I'm talking and going off in different directions, but one of the reasons why I got off YouTube in the end was because I noticed that if I went to their search, and I searched the exact wording in quotes of one of my videos. So I know I'm searching that in title in quotes like you do with Google, you know, and I do it for maybe the Skripal poisonings, or maybe I do it for any of my Syria videos or any of my Julian Assange videos. And I go to the Google search, nothing comes up. Everything is CNN, is MSNBC, is BBC. Nothing comes up. Nothing. I can type that and Gordon Dimmack in the YouTube search function. Go and try it. And you will not find my video. You can't go to my video. You know my video tab on YouTube? You can't go to that and click video, search my video for that title, and it still won't bring up the video I did on the Skripals or the Syria thing, or that's how much they are throttling independent media. You can't even search my own channel for my own videos on YouTube. And at that
word
point,
for
I just
word.
went, what the fuck why am I bothered in this? Why am I bothering?
Yeah.
It's like the
So
Wikipedia biography effect.
Yes. Wikipedia is terrible. Ugh,
Yeah,
what a shit show.
I do a lot of videos on TikTok now, and I had a comment the other day about Wikipedia, and I mentioned that the grey zone was one of the best places to get news from a global, your geopolitical sort of news. I mentioned the grey zone and Impress News. And somebody said, oh, yeah, I searched for the grey zone and I couldn't find it on Google. And Wikipedia said it's a dark money Russian site.
Yeah.
And I quoted Wikipedia, and now so it's like shit. Now I've got to go in and do a video explain to people that Wikipedia isn't thing. I've got to explain who Philip Cross is and go, you know. So all right, okay. If that's what I've got to do, it's what I've got to do.
It's amazing. Oh, and
So
the complete control over the information is such a threat. It's such a threat.
It really, it's mind-boggling to me that. You see, there's a quote, I forget who it is. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher it. I think it's Oscar Wilde. He said something like, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. It's probably Oscar Wilde. He bloody quoted everything, didn't he? But I can see it happening again. You know, it was 1928. It was the liberals who threw sanity under the bus, and that led to the rise of fascism in the 30s. You know, it was these liberals now cheering on the death of free speech. It's quite insane.
It's unbelievable. Oh my God.
Can I say Chris Hedges, the boutique Democrats, he calls them.
Yeah.
Oh, what a beautiful expression. The boutique, everything's flowers and rosy in their window. Just, you know.
Why do you have to be such a negative Nancy? Yeah, I mean, we have AOC calling everybody negative Nancy's if they want to criticize anything that she does, and she's cheering on authoritarianism and censorship. She's like sicking her entire massive email list to like inform them that they need to go on Twitter and mass report people that say things that are unfavorable to her. And they say it all the time though: if you scratch a liberal, you'll find a fascist, and that's exactly what it is. And that's, I mean, and you're right. It's really frustrating because we are witnessing it's history repeating itself all over again. We never fucking learn. And another empire is going to fall. Fascism is going to rise again. We're going to have to do the whole damn thing all over again. And
well, I like AOC. I think she's a good actress.
She is a good actress. I mean, she's an overactor. Let's be real.
She's turning into Donald Rumsfeld. I don't know whether you saw that video the other day. She was
the
saying there was
the
unknowns. All people were saying was like, what about the 10%? What about the 10%? What about the 10%? Well, there are known unknowns. And what happened as the eviction moratorium, it's gone now, hasn't it? But
it is gone.
Nixed it. So all of that grandstanding and all that accessing and all the applauding, and they got what?
Nothing.
Bupkis. Nothing. These people don't care about you. They really do not care about you. They are boutique liberals. Beautiful.
I love Chris Hedges.
Democrats, sorry.
Beautiful. And I hate Donald Rumsfeld. I hated him when he was alive. I hate him now that he's dead still. But AOC is nowhere near as intelligent, calculating, or cunning as Rumsfeld was.
That's fair.
Let's
but
just
she just used his wording. And when she did, because that's Franco was the one who was recording when that was all going down. He was the one questioning them. What about the 10%? Right. And when she said, we have knowns and we have unknowns, I'm like, she just totally quoted Donald Rumsfeld. What is happening? Oh, but they moved mountains, Gordon. They moved mountains with that extension. That's what they did.
But they moved mountains. What did they get?
Nothing. We got nothing. Like, okay, some people got like maybe what is it? A couple weeks, and that's not even the case because I live in Columbus, Ohio, and last week in Columbus, Ohio, there were 514 eviction. What do they call it? When they like what is the word I'm looking for? When they apply, the landlords like apply for the evictions or whatever. 514 in 1 week. And there were no mountains moved.
And last night when the news broke, I was just going to say last night when the news broke here, a bunch of headlines I saw said hundreds of thousands could lose their homes. And millions. I thought it's going to be way more than hundreds of thousands. And the media is already trying to downplay, at least the mainstream media is trying to downplay the catastrophe.
It was 5.1 million, I believe, in 2008. This is a bigger.
This is way bigger.
This is like putting the Spanish flu in the middle of World War II. This is
Right?
basically what
Because
that's
this isn't just evictions. Like that's why people don't understand it's going to be so much worse in 2008. We're also in the middle of like a economic crisis, a global pandemic. Like there's so much shit going on right now. And I think it's really telling that they dropped this news late last night as Afghanistan is falling apart. And like, as there's over 100 deaths, and really you're trying to hide this shit under that. It's so gross the way that our media.
And then just before that, they announced the ever-present they announced that
right.
It's not going to be 8 months. Now it's going to be 6 months after your second COVID shot that you're supposed to get the third one, or the booster.
Fuck your boosters.
So I was joking to my partner that maybe we're going to see 4 months soon, and then 2 months, and then every week until, as
just
Max
an IV drip.
As Max Blumenthal has said, we're up to the Zeta variant and out of letters. So
I can't imagine it's going to get there. I can't imagine it's going to go that far. But
right.
I will say this, going back to the AFC thing. When she was elected, Missy, I think I did a video. It's still on YouTube. I was giddy. I'm like 6,000 miles away from America, and I was really excited. I really was. I thought, yes, finally. And then
a lot of people
the squad grew, and there was a wave of optimism that came on the back of it. I'm of the opinion now that it would have been better if the squad didn't get elected, because
100%.
How many hundreds of thousands, millions even, of people have been sheep herded into the Democratic Party once again because of the squad. I mean, you keep going back. Any organization, I keep hearing organizations over organizations. You love Jimmy Dore, and he did a video with Chris Edges, and it was like our revolution. And you go back, and every one of them had the same sort of progressive values, and they were going to take it to the man, and then they got enveloped into the fold. And the same thing has happened now with the squad. You're not going to, it's the same as over here. You're not going to affect any change by voting for this two-party duopoly. And I mean, we've got multiple parties over here, but really there's only two that are going to get in power. Right. Yeah. And right now, I mean, there's an old, I say this to all my American friends, so if I've said this to you before, I'm sorry. There's an old sketch, the comedy sketch, and I think it's Dudley Moore. Maybe somebody can shed a light on it. But it's 1960s, this is, and he's talking to an American, and they're discussing politics, and Dudley Moore says, so what's the difference? What are the similarities? What's the difference between UK and US politics? And he says, well, over here we have the Republican Party, which is the same as your Conservative Party back home. And then we have the Democratic Party, which is the same as your Conservative Party back home. That was 50, 60 years ago. The only thing that's changed since then is now we have the Labour Party over here, which is the same as the Conservative Party at home. That really is the only thing that has changed in 60 years when you look at that sketch. The only thing. People have to create some sort of movement outside these two parties. I'm never going to vote for either of them again. I don't care if somebody like Mother Teresa becomes leader of the Labour Party. Basically, she already was. Let's face it, Jeremy Corbyn was her, right? And they crucified him, but he wanted to be Jesus.
The way that he was treated, and the way that all the anti-Semitic bullshit, and he's so much better than Bernie Sanders, obviously. I mean, he's like
he's a pacifist. He's a pacifist.
He wouldn't fight. He wouldn't fight back.
He's pacifist. He wouldn't throw a punch. He came from the Jesus school.
Too nice.
He is too nice. We need a ruthless humanitarian. That's what we need. Like, we need a ruthless, like somebody who is Jeremy Corbyn, but is also not afraid to fuck shit up. You know what I mean? Like, we need somebody who can have the courage to stand up against this shit. Like the anti-Semitic stuff should have never been able to fly. He should have been standing up against that from minute one. That should have never been able to fly. And they destroyed him with that.
the trouble is, Mister, we do have those people. We really do, over here and over there. We've got those people. You've got people like Cornel West and Jimmy Dore and Chris Hedges, and you've got and Abby Martin. All these fantastic people who are willing to stick it to the establishment and whatever. The problem is the machine just casts them right to the outskirts of society.
Mm-hmm.
You look at what's happening now with, an executive order, I think in America, I heard by Biden, dictated that 22 states now, you can't get food stamps or something like that. And if you speak out in pro-Palestine language,
Mm-hmm.
it's
unbelievable.
Look, please start looking at history, please.
I know.
It's happening again.
Yeah, it is happening again. They're completely destroying. We have the First Amendment. Y'all don't have the First Amendment. We have the First Amendment. It's one of the best fucking things ever in government. I mean, the ability to speak and to redress your government and to protest and all, it's amazing. And we are literally handing it over. Like, we're giving it away. People are cheering it on. Like, they're cheering on, the extradition of Julian Assange, and they're cheering on whistleblowers being put in prison for, 5 years. And they're cheering on this, pro-Israel. You can't, like, a teacher lost her job because she refused to pledge allegiance to a foreign country. What is that? What the fuck is that? That's insanity. It makes no sense whatsoever. And then what makes me the most frustrated, not even the most frustrated, but another part that makes me frustrated is conservatives proclaim to care about the Constitution, but they're usually the ones, doing the whole Israel thing, and it's all across the board. But you don't come, oh God, it's just so frustrating to be watching it happen and be screaming about it, and nobody's paying attention. Nobody cares.
And it's essentially the first litmus test that incoming politicians, or possibly incoming politicians, face in this country, and probably in the UK as well, based on what happened to Jeremy Corbyn. And with Obama, we saw it in 2006, I believe it was, or perhaps a few years earlier. He was very pro-Palestinian and very outspoken about it. As it got closer to the 2008 election, he dropped all that, and whatever was on his website, he erased. And then fast forward to 2018, and AOC is put in the hot seat with regard to comments or positions she'd taken on Palestine. And in a PBS interview with Margaret Hoover, she, in one of the most embarrassing ways I've ever seen, pretty much walks that all back and then says, I am not the expert in international relations. And she has a degree in international relations from Boston University. So again, that was July 2018, I think a month or two after she won over Crowley. And already she was backpedaling and pretty much falling over herself to...
She deleted all of her pro-Palestine stuff from her website. She doesn't talk, you'll notice she doesn't talk about Palestine anymore.
All of her anti-war stances as well.
Yeah. And that's what's really frustrating about the people who still defend the squad. When they ran, the whole point of them running was, we're going to go in and we're going to challenge the Democratic establishment. They were coming off the heels of the Bernie Sanders movement. Bernie Sanders had just gotten fucked over. Everybody was pissed off. And the whole thing was, we're going to go challenge Nancy Pelosi. We're going to go in there and we're going to fight. We're going to get a seat at the table.
You were going to do a left-wing Tea Party.
Yeah, we're going to transform.
Tea Party.
We're going to transform the Democratic Party and make it into a party of the people. And now they completely capitulate to Nancy Pelosi. All they do is talk about how terrible Republicans are. They don't hold their own party accountable. They're not doing what they said that they were going to do, and people will still make excuses for them and get mad at me, call me an asshole for being mean to them and for calling them out on the shit that they're not doing.
You're not giving them a chance.
Yeah,
and it's the way they'll use, they'll use accounts on social media in the Democratic Party world to sheep herd people. It's the same thing. It's just sheep herding people into a cult. Really, that's what it is. It's a cult. And if you, I think
really Rose McGowan said that. Rose McGowan totally said that the Democratic Party.
She really? Well, she's a badass, so I'm not surprised.
I love her. I want to be Rose McGowan when I grow up.
I think you're nearly there, to be honest. You're a badass too, mister. If you really want any sort of change, I think we've got to just this two-party duopoly, both in America and over here. It's not fit for purpose. It just isn't. These people that end up getting elected are the most mediocre people you can possibly imagine. And if they're not mediocre and they have got an ounce of, brain in their head, they're the kind of people that you don't want anywhere near the levels of power, because they are evil, and they will get all these mediocre people doing their business for them. And you can see it playing out. These people know nothing about, and the thing that pisses me off as well is all the money they're making.
Yes.
It's even good people, who say they're all progressive and they say they're anti-war and what have you. You got their spouses who have got stocks in defence contractors firms and Northrop Grumman and Raytheon and Boeing. Whilst they're going on shows saying, yeah, we're anti-war and isn't it terrible? They're profiting from this and it's paying for their futures, and they're all right, Jack. The people I've seen the pictures over there, and I've seen the streets over here. The society is decaying.
Yes.
It's decaying.
Quickly.
People don't trust the institutions that they look to. We used to look to institutions like the BBC and Reuters and the New York Times and the Washington. We used to look to these institutions and things like MIT and these universities. And now you don't know who to frigging trust. You don't know who's been paid off. You realise that people are in the positions not because they are the best person to be in that position, but because they're the most pliable and the most, the people who are not going to rattle enough cages. There's a brilliant thing with Noam Chomsky and one of the reporters over here where he explains just that. He's in the position because of precisely how he thinks. And people get elevated to these positions of power now, where it's just got to a stage where we need almost like an overhaul of the entire system to say, well, I mean, it's clearly not fit for purpose. Not, there are very few people who are making a shitload of money and the rest of us are paying for it. Yes. That's slavery.
Yes. And then Bernie Sanders the other day tweeted something out about how corporations don't pay their fair share of taxes and that we just keep giving money to the rich. And you voted for the fucking CARES Act, you stupid son of a bitch. I'm so sick of this shit.
To do all this, to achieve this mission, what they've had to do, as your friend Steve, as our friend Steve says, is manufacture confusion.
Yes.
To do it. So they've manufactured confusion to the point where nobody trusts anything they say anymore. Nobody trusts anything from Fox and MSNBC and CNN. Everybody knows that they're fake news. Everybody knows that the BBC is fake news over here and Sky News. Most people with a brain in their heads do. Anyway, right at the point where they're saying to us, come here, let me stick this in your arm every 6 months. It'd be totally fine, honest. It's totally fine. That you cannot blame people. You cannot demonize these people. They are, people anti-vaxxers, they keep calling. No, they're not anti-vaxxers. They're people who don't trust their frigging government, and I don't blame them. No. Okay, there's a lot of misinformation out there. You don't know what information this person has been subjected to in their life. They have been radicalized in almost the same fucking way as you radicalize terrorists over in other countries and send them into Syria and call them freedom fighters. Yeah. You've got to look at people through the bubble of their own eyes and have some empathy. They've gone through an education system which quite honestly sucks. It really
That's
does.
Generous.
It's
terrible.
It's terrible. The rest of the world is laughing at America.
Yes. Well, and what really pisses me off currently about all of the vaccine stuff is that people are demonizing those who are hesitant to trust the government. And like only 24% of the Black population is vaccinated. Nobody should fucking blame them. They have literally been experimented on. We know it happened. So are you really going to blame them? This is racial segregation.
Instead, what I see them do is using stats like that to whip up racial fucking hatred against them. Look, it's the blacks' fault. They're not the ones who aren't getting vaccinated. That's why COVID's hanging around. It's a never-ending spiral of hatred and bile and shit.
Division.
It's like the physical anomaly of Twitter.
Yeah, I keep saying that they would much rather facilitate a race war or a civil war, because then that means they don't have to deal with the class war. And that's why they use all of these things to divide us. That's why, I mean, that now, and I hate the anti-vaxxer thing because I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Again, I've said this before on camera. I literally am on a list from 2015 of people that anti-vaxxers hate. Like, I am in no way could you ever call me an anti-vaxxer. I spent years in the trenches of that fight. And I'm hesitant about the vaccine. Every fucking buddy should. I still, if you want to make the choice to get it, if you've examined it for yourself and you've made the personal decision that that's the best move for you, I absolutely do. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But nobody should be demonizing, ostracizing, people who are hesitant about it. Yeah, threatening. Are you fucking kidding me? And you're right, Gordon. There's so much time and energy spent hating the people. And there's no energy spent on the fact that we have these institutions and our government that have created such an environment of distrust that people are unwilling to go and get a vaccine when there's a pandemic. Why are we not angry at the institutions who've created, like, that should be where our energy is spent.
Exactly.
There's a xenophobic aspect to the vaccine regime as well, because the US doesn't recognize Sinovac, for example, as a legitimate vaccine, or the Russian iteration of the vaccine. I'm forgetting the name. The US doesn't recognize those as legitimate, or Iran's iteration as legitimate. So if you travel here and they ask you if you've been vaccinated and you say, yes, I've received the Sinovac, well, we don't recognize that, so you can't enter the country.
Oh, that's a Muslim ban by the back door, that is.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a Middle Eastern Muslim ban by the back door. It's just, you're not using the terminology, but that's the way it is. That's what you've
essentially
done.
what it is.
Yeah. I had it the opposite direction. I decided to get the vaccination, and I had people attacking me for getting the vaccination. It's like, hold on a minute. I don't attack you for not getting. Why can't you afford me?
Right.
These are the same people who hate it when people attack them for not getting the vaccination. They're attacking me for getting it. I'm like,
I don't care.
That. Why are you doing it to me?
I don't care. If you want to get it, get it. If you don't want to get it, don't get it. It's a personal fucking choice. It's a personal medical decision. I don't care. Like, it's not none of my business. So yeah, the people on both sides need to calm the fuck down. Calm the fuck down.
They don't realize this amount of misinformation that the media and the government especially has put out there has made people, they already didn't trust them. But now nobody trusts them, not a single person. Everybody's wary of them. And society is decaying to the point where, I hear stories in America of people going and picking up horse tranquilizer and then going to the checkout, and the checkout girl going, that is not for use on humans, right? Because it's got ivermectin. And they've heard that ivermectin will help COVID. So they're getting horse tranquilizer. Now we get at a point where, and it's all their fault. It's not those people's fault. It's all the people's fault who are putting so much false information into the world, and they're just lying, because let's face it, all they want to do is just keep their own power and their own money, and they want it all. And to hell with the rest of us. That's
and there's so much misinformation about ivermectin or other alternative treatments, which I'm not saying that any of them.
No, me neither. I'm not either.
But we can't even have the conversation.
I would suggest horse tranquilizer is not the best way to fight COVID.
But
that's what I'm saying.
See all the caveats we have to give our statements. Yeah. Just having this conversation.
I'm not saying on eggshells, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you have to, because people get so fucking pissed off, and it's okay. But what troubles me is that we're not even allowed to have the discussion. We can't even talk about ivermectin or hydrochloroquine or whatever it is. You can't even. To me, that's a huge red flag. That's a huge to completely wipe that out from the narrative. And if you can get your YouTube channel taken down, it's happened to lots of people. Last American Vagabond, Whitney Webb. Like, if they even talk about these things, and again, I'm not saying saying that ivermectin's like a foolproof, like, but it has shown promise in treating COVID symptoms. And so I think that that's something we should absolutely be having a conversation about. That shouldn't be stifled in any way. That should be welcome. Everybody should be. It's just like when Jimmy Dore, he got vaccinated and then was like just openly talking about the side effects that he experienced, and people were freaking out. Like, you're an anti-vaxxer, and he's like, I got vaccinated. What are you talking about? We should be welcoming people who get vaccinated to explain what their symptoms have or what their side effects were, because that just helps us make the vaccines better. That's exactly what you want. And it's this madness.
And you can report your side effects to the CDC, but the public can't access that information. It goes into a private database somewhere.
Well, you can on VAERS,
what's the point?
Vaccine adverse reaction, whatever it is. You can, there's some, but I don't even trust that. Like, I don't trust that that information isn't being skewed, and that, of course, like, everybody should be skeptical of these institutions. They're known liars. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's got to the stage now where it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And we've got Brexit over here as well, which is that's thrown in the mix. And that's we've got supply problems, and it's all gone to shit. It's like as George Carlin says, it's like getting 2 tickets to the freak show. It's getting a ticket to the freak show and watching it just all decay into nonsense. But you know, I think as a person, we've just got to try and be, you know, as supportive of each other as we can, and try and elevate people who, you know, are going to look after people's best interests and get rid of this democratic, you know, Labour, Conservative, Republican, you know, both over there and over here. We should just, if their purpose is to govern the people and in their best interests, then they've clearly failed. And it's clearly time for something new.
Is it as virulent over there as it is here? And what I mean by that, like the standing of politicians, like there are people who put like this law on a pedestal. Is it as bad there as it is here?
No, look at Tony Blair.
Oh my God.
He won 3 elections. He won 3 elections, and they ask you know, it's snowing in Wednesfield. Oh, let's bring Tony Blair on and find out what he thinks. You know,
he's still treated as a respectable elder statesman.
They brought him on to talk about Afghanistan.
Right.
Yeah. They bring him on to talk about everything. This
is a war criminal.
Everything. Yeah, everything. And then he comes on to advocate for vaccines, and everybody goes, well, no, I'm definitely not going to get the vaccine. You know? So our friend Danny calls people like him vampires. They have no idea of their reflection. They have no idea of how people perceive them. They just don't understand that we see them as war criminals and people who we shouldn't be holding up as a light to society and our children and say, look at this Prime Minister, isn't he fantastic? Everybody listens to him. When he got us and lied us into a war on terror that has cost how many millions of lives? And you know it's going to be millions. And it was lies that it was based on, complete lies. All because, well, if you actually looked at the real reasons why those twin towers fell, you would find that actually you would have to point the finger back at yourselves, because that's where bin Laden and the whole Al-Qaeda Taliban nonsense came from. It all came from failed UK and US policy in Afghanistan, in the Middle East, in the first place, and elsewhere in Latin America, etc. You know, we could go on forever. It's horrifying. It really is. We are ruled by complete and utter monsters who are only meant to govern us.
Yeah, and after 9/11, it was essentially a sin to ask why it happened. Why would an attack on this scale happen to the United States? Is there something wrong out there that we're doing?
They hate us for our freedom, Jesse.
Yeah, and go ahead.
You won't have, I don't know whether you've seen this, but I think there were 8 Britons who were killed on 9/11. I think it was 8. One of them, their family has opened up an inquiry over here because they claim that they have evidence that the towers were brought down by a fire accelerant or something like that on the beams. So it's not over 9/11, is it?
No.
And when you've got people, who can't even question the narrative, when there are obvious, complete and utter ludicrous, not just lies, but what you're telling me happened is ludicrous. You're telling me that you were tracking these terrorists that you knew were terrorists, and I'm pointing specifically at people like CIA here. You were tracking these people as they came into the US, and then the minute they did, you stopped tracking them and didn't fucking tell anybody. And that's the official story.
That's another thing, though, that you're not allowed to question the establishment narrative. And if you do, you're a kooky conspiracy theorist. And oh my God, you're a 9/11 truther. No, I just know that my government lies all the fucking time. And so I don't trust anything that they say. And there should be legitimate inquiries into what happened on 9/11, period.
Yeah.
Well,
if you look at the, I was just going to say,
I was just going to say, Jesse, there should be some sort of talk about how bin Laden got the power and how bin Laden got the structure and why they did it as well, rather than they just hate our freedoms, because that's not the case. And that's what ended up being papered over, wasn't it? That's what they basically ended up saying. Sorry, you carry on.
Yeah, and just to add to that,
it's fine. No, it's fine.
That's a good point. And just to add to that, the fear that they both drummed up and that was organically generated among Americans from the acts of terror themselves, that was capitalized on right away. And there was any capacity there was for critical thought was squashed. And that's led us to where we are now with Afghanistan. And with the suicide bombings that happened yesterday, I think we're already seeing a lack of critical analysis from a lot of corners on what exactly happened, because their supposedly U.S. intelligence knew of this threat, knew that it was imminent, and
not supposedly, they announced it days before.
Right.
Really? Because I watched the State Department spokesman 6 days ago, I think it was. You'll have to check this. I did a video about it not long ago. Literally say in the same sentence to a reporter, intelligence said so and so, so and so, so and so on the ground in Afghanistan. And then the next time his excuse was, well, we haven't got that many people on the ground anymore, so we haven't got that much intelligence. So which is it? You've either got lots of intelligence that you know very much about, or you haven't got any intelligence because you've got no troops on the ground. And there's been no critical thought at all. I see highly prominent people on Twitter, with blue ticks, people in America who I consider, great political commentators, straight away coming out and saying it was ISIS that did it. It's like, what evidence have you seen that it was ISIS?
Right.
And who are ISIS-K? Why are you saying ISIS-K all of a sudden? It's just, there's been no critical analysis, like you say. Who benefits this? Why are they doing this? There's no analysis possible. It's just them. They're bad. They don't like our freedoms. It's nonsense. It really is. I think 3 Britons were killed today as well in those suicide bombings. And there's been no analysis over here of the sort either. They've all been very quickly to jump to, it's terrorism. It's terrorism from no other than, they must hate us. Well, why? Right. We've been bombing them for 20 years. Maybe that's got
Can't imagine. Yeah, can't imagine why they don't like us.
And ISIS-K really came to the fore of the media, at least here, just in the past week. Nobody had heard of it, and it's questionable if the group even exists. If you look at the Center for
Construct of Empire,
Strategic International Studies, I believe it is, CSIS, they have a report from several years ago that starts on ISIS-K, but it starts off with a disclaimer of sorts that despite initial doubts about the group's existence from analysts and experts. So that's the caveat right there. And then Rachel Blevins, who's a journalist with RT, she's also pointed this out in a series of tweets that essentially ISIS-K, if they do exist, they are an American invention. They're an invention of Western imperialism. They're
most terrorist organizations are.
Right.
Well,
But
even if they are an organic terrorist group that sprung out of Afghanistan, how and why have they sprung out of Afghanistan? Is it maybe because they've been fucking hiding in caves for the last 20 years and have had no education whatsoever? They've come out of the caves and the Americans are buggering off and they're taking one last shot at them. I don't know, but at least that's a point of view that we can explore and have a conversation about, not just, oh, it's ISIS. They said it was ISIS. It must be ISIS. They've never lied to us. They've never lied to us before, have they?
right. And my working theory, if you will, is that the US has no intention of ending its occupation of Afghanistan. It's trying to find a way to continue it in a new form. We're hearing about over the horizon capabilities, and which means drone strikes, which means mercenaries. But if we, I was going somewhere with this, but I lost the thread.
That's what it's, I'll jump in there. That's what it's going to be, Jesse. It's going to be mercenaries. It's going to be replacing the troops on the ground with paid troops who, let's face it, might not have the level of standards that the American troops have, and we all know
that they have standards.
We all know American troops have been guilty of torture and what have you over there. Yeah. You know, so and now it's going to go to mercenaries that won't necessarily have a code of conduct and what have you. And we're talking about an area of the world that is ruled by, you know, drug lords, that is ruled by, you know, corrupt police captains. I've heard stories of, you know, who's looking around in a poppy field. Who's poppy fielded this? Oh yeah, it's the police captains. Yeah, we're invited to a thing next week where we're going to have a party and smoke. You know, it's
madness.
You can see that this is going to be taken advantage of, even when I'm not saying that withdrawing is the right thing to do. Getting out is the right thing to do. They've had time to plan for it, and it's been totally ballsed up, which tells me that they never planned for it at all, which means they had no intention of withdrawing. So what the hell's happened, I don't know, but it's been botched totally. We need to get out. We need to let these countries heal. You know, we need to let countries like, we need to help them as well. And that's, I mean, look at Libya. Look at what happened to it. It was the richest country in Africa, and it was destroyed because what? Destroyed because, well, there were rumors that it's because he wanted to do a dinar-backing African gold, wasn't it? And, you know, that's what. But it all comes down to that sort of thing. We're destroying these countries for profit, for money, and then we're buggering off and leaving them to pick up the devastation, and then wondering afterwards, why do they hate us? Oh, it's because they hate us.
And nobody will tell you, for example, with regard to Libya, that Gaddafi was the first Arab leader ever to report Osama bin Laden to Interpol in 1998. He was trying to create a pan-Arab alliance, things that just did not comport.
And that's why
with U.S. imperialism,
he wouldn't bend to our will, and that's
right.
that's really what it amounts to. Also, there's some rumors that Hillary Clinton thought that she needed like a foreign policy notch on her belt to run for president in 2016, so that was going to be her way of doing it. So
what I was going to say earlier, just to go back because I remembered, was that the U.S., as we know, has a long sordid history of working with jihadist proxies. We've seen it in Syria. And why should it be any different in Afghanistan? They could be working with ISIS-K, or they could have somehow generated ISIS-K as a moderate rebel counterbalance to the Taliban, because the U.S. has been more than bruised in this so-called withdrawal, and the whole 20-year war and occupation. They've been punched in the face multiple times. They haven't just had their noses bloodied. So they're not going to leave. The U.S. is not going to leave with its tail between its legs, and it could very well resort to using ISIS-K as a way to destabilize and delegitimize the Taliban, who are proving themselves to be a much more put together and internationalist, I don't know if that's the right word, but entity than, you know, the Taliban that we were given narratives about in the early 2000s and even before that in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean there are rights groups now, women's rights groups, etc., that are saying that they're ready to work with the Taliban like they used to in the 90s. You know, the Taliban used to, and obviously things have moved on since then. So who knows? I mean, all I know.
It's going to be interesting to watch it play out and where it goes.
Well, it's awful, and you know it's going to be a really hard time for the country, and it's going to be a really hard time for the people. 3.5 million Afghans have been displaced. The low-end figures are 40,000 civilians have been killed, and that's the low-end figures. You know that anybody over the age of 18, you know, the American authorities and the British would like to paint them as terrorists and bad guys, even whether they've got a weapon or not. So the fact is, it's probably going to be higher than that. And these are people who are going to have families with friends and people who love them, who are not going to be too happy that the Americans have killed their family members for no goddamn reason. And the British as well. We've had a hand in this, and you know, other countries. There was how many 28 countries or something involved in this over the years, but it's all been a pack of lies. There was never, for the last 12 years, there's been no mission. I don't think there was ever a mission for the you know, the decade previous to that either. The reason they went into Afghanistan originally wasn't because the Taliban refused to hand him over, as the media say in America. It was because the Taliban said, we want him to go to The Hague for a trial or something like that. And America said, you either with us or against us, we're going to invade.
We don't negotiate with terrorists.
Next thing you know, Tony Blair's on the TV saying, yeah, British troops are involved in this as well, these bombings and what have you. We never had any say in it whatsoever. This war on terror has cost you 6.4 trillion. It's cost us 22 billion or 30 billion or whatever that is. It's without the interest, so we've got to pay that yet. We've only just finished paying off World War One, 2015. We've only just paid off. And now we've got another 30 billion. Meanwhile, I've just found out Grenfell Tower, you know, the cladding, that tower that went up. They've only just removed that same cladding from a school in Dundee 4 years later. 4 years later. It took them 4 years, 70 grand it cost them, Misty. I could have got 100 blokes to rip it down with their bare hands and done it in about a week. And it took them 4 years and 70 grand to take that cladding from a secondary school. Meanwhile, we've got 30 billion plus God knows how much interest to waste on pointless wars where you couldn't even define what the mission was.
Yeah.
And now they're withdrawing in haste, and everybody's saying that we're over there for some sort of feminist crusade or some sort of humanitarian mission. If it was so humanitarian, why did you drop so many goddamn bombs on their heads?
Right.
Did you see the Moab? That was Afghanistan, Moab.
Yeah. Yep.
And
100%.
Just before we started, the news came out that Biden has given U.S. commanders on the ground in Afghanistan full authority to go after Daesh, ISIS. So
he said we're not gonna let you get away with this, blah 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 blah. It's a bunch of posturing and stupid dick measuring.
Isn't that what got you into this mess in the goddamn first place?
Yes.
What you just withdrew from Afghanistan? No, you're gonna have to go back in. No, he's talking about drone strikes, isn't he? That's what he's talking about. Yeah, he's talking about.
Because he even said precision. Bullshit. Daniel Hill already
showed. There are people in that
precision
part of the world. There are people in that part of the world, in the Middle East and Pakistan. I'm starting to get upset now. There are kids that are afraid of the sun.
Yeah.
Because that's when the drones fly.
Yep.
Yeah.
They'll only go out when it's rainy and cloudy. They're scared of the sun.
Yeah, they're constantly looking at the sky.
We're monsters.
We are monsters. We are monsters. There's no question about it. We are the bad guys. It's not even a debate. There's not even a debate here to be had. And what really pisses me off, just given what I do, is that Julian Assange told us all of this 11 years ago. He exposed it all 11 years ago. And instead of listening to him, we demonized him, dehumanized him, and now we're torturing him to death. And you know, that's the state of our society. And it's fucking frustrating. It's so disgusting to me that we elevate people like Joe Biden to positions of power. We elected Joe fucking Biden to the presidency, and Julian Assange is being tortured in Belmarsh prison. That makes no sense to me on any level.
I know everything's well, I mean, everything's We let it happen, not us. We let it happen. I mean, I'm to
Mhm.
blame as well. It's only been the last 4 or 5 years that I've really woke up and discovered that, the world is not as it seemed to be, and we are not the force for good in the world that the media have told us. And you've just got to try and wake as many other people up as possible, and hope that one day we're going to hit a tipping point that means that, we'll eventually take something back, because everything that people have fought for, they had to fight for. You look back, it was always, massive movements of people that got them, and the right to vote, the right to work, the 40 hour, the holidays and etc. Or you wouldn't know anything about those. You in America, you still haven't got them, have you? You still haven't got paid vacation. You don't.
We don't have shit. We have nothing. This country is a disaster.
Some people get paid vacations, but it's not.
But that's based on like your company can offer you. It's like a plus. That's what they use for like recruiting if they want to, get. But it's not like a mandated thing where everybody should get paid vacations and everybody.
Do you get maternity leave?
No,
paid maternity leave?
Not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed. It's not mandated. We get 0 weeks. 0 weeks. Your employer, if your company decides to be generous and offer you some paid time off, they can do that, but it's not mandated. So you can have a baby and literally be expected to go back to work the next day.
I think ours is 20. I think ours is 25 days. I think it's 5 weeks mandatory paid vacation.
In my personal opinion, it should be a year. It should at least 6 months at least. That's like one of the most important times between a mother and a child. And leave too.
I mean 5 weeks paid vacation a year for everybody.
Yes.
No matter whether they're pregnant or not, we get that over here. I think if you include the bank holidays, and then you get, I think it's 5 weeks mandatory. But then, they fudged everything. They fudged everything since I checked that, Misty, because everybody's on 0-hour contracts over here, and we've got a gig economy where people don't even have, the rights of being an employee anymore, because they class them as a
contractor. You
get away with paying them, 26 pence an hour, or the equivalent of.
Everything's really fucked up. I mean, this is such a positive show, you guys.
Here, the intern peonage we have here.
Yeah.
Sign on as a free intern, and maybe you'll get a job at the end of
your
your tenure.
The only people who are going to be able to afford to sign on to an internship are people who have maybe come from money. So therefore, what you've got is, if you have an internship, if you take the media, for instance, you've got an internship at Fox or CNN, the only people they can take then, who can afford to take those jobs and not get paid, are people who have got daddy's money or mommy's money, that sort of thing. And then you're almost guaranteeing that you're never going to have any sort of diversity in these companies at all. You might have a black person, a Chinese person, and a white person, and a woman and a man. You might have that, but they all come from the same class of people. You're not having anybody from where I come from in that sort of environment, and then and they wonder why they're so detached from everybody, and they don't understand how people at a ground level think.
Yeah. And that was so apparent at the Capitol when they did the eviction moratorium protests, because most of the people that were there were interns or staffers, and you could tell that there was a lot of privilege on those steps, and they had no idea how the evictions were affecting actual people who are going to be living on the streets, who are currently living on the streets, because the evictions have been happening this whole time. And my friend Morgan Archikina, who's a great journalist who works for Sputnik, she actually, the morning before the protest started, she tweeted out a picture of a homeless encampment that was right across the street from the Capitol, that they stole all their stuff and forced them to go elsewhere. And that's so, it's just
that'll solve it. That'll solve it, won't it?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
out of sight, out of mind.
It's so inhumane. It really, everything's just so inhumane, and everybody's just putting up with it. And it's really frustrating that more people aren't just infuriated. People aren't in the streets over this. And it's just
they don't know, Mister.
I know.
They don't know. You can't, they just don't know. They are one of two things. And they're either uninformed, or worse, they're misinformed by a mainstream media that is just
the media is one of the biggest threats that we face.
They're never going to be forgiven.
No.
If there's justice, they are never going to be forgiven for what they've done specifically in the last 5 years, but certainly in the last 10, and certainly what they've done to Julian. And then these same people say, "Oh, a free press is absolutely imperative to a national security." I want to ram those words.
The hypocrisy of like Anthony Blinken or Kamala Harris putting out a tweet for World Press Freedom Day is just nauseating. It's so gross.
Yeah,
Anyway,
when you start tying press freedom to national security, they don't have anything to do with each other. And it is a cornerstone of democracy. I'll give you that. Right. If you really want to have a truly democratic society, you need a free press. There's no question about it. But yeah, tying it to national security is a whole other level of weird. And
well, that is the Twitter bio of a woman who is the you'll have to Barbara something or other. Barbara something. She's the Twitter bio of the the Pentagon liaison for CNN.
Barbara Starr.
She says
she's a hot mess.
A free press is imperative to national security, and if that doesn't bore you, nothing.
She's like. Remember Helen Thomas, who was actually a very good White House press correspondent. She was always pushing back. She was at it for decades. Was quite old when she died.
I do remember her.
And Barbara Starr is like the polar opposite of her, but she's like the Helen Thomas of the national security state. You know, every question she asks, every story she writes, the way she frames everything is not just in service of the national security state, but is under the assumption that we need a national security state to lord over us and
she is a stenographer. She's the definition of a stenographer, and that's most of our mainstream media. That's why media is such a huge threat, in my opinion, because it's all stenographers.
This journalist who thinks that a free press is imperative to a national security state has never said anything in support of Julian Assange.
Of course not.
And also right now is tweeting out pictures of American troops holding babies at Kabul airport, as if, as if there aren't troops that, let's face it, would throw that baby in a river if they were ordered to, and that hasn't been dropping bombs on their heads for the last 20 years.
20 years. You don't get to destroy a country for 20 years and then hold a baby and everything's fine.
And what about Palestinian babies? What about Syrian babies? Exactly. What about Yemeni babies?
Exactly. Some Muslims are more important than others. Some Muslims are more important.
Well, that's just like Bernie Sanders when he tweeted about the suicide bombings, mentioned the 10 Marines or whatever that were the 10 Americans who were killed, didn't mention a word about the 100 Afghans that were murdered. Not a word, didn't breathe a word of it. And this is our progressive hero. Fuck off, dude. That's so gross. He's such an imperialist coward.
Yeah, and all the mainstream media headlines yesterday would lead with the Marine death toll, and then almost as an afterthought, oh yeah, at that point it was 70 Afghans, now it's up to almost 200, but they were treated as essentially an afterthought, and that's how
they're even mentioned.
Right, and that's how they've always been regarded, even before the invasion of 2001. And the US never has and never will care about Afghanistan or its people or their welfare, and certainly not bringing them any kind of justice or reparations for what they've done there.
No.
As I said, for more than 20 years, but if you want to start the clock in 2001, you can.
Yeah, it's decades.
How often have these talking heads on cable news been, and on the news on certain progressive shows have banged on about the cost of this war, 6.4 trillion, and the fact that it was started on lies. And I forgot the point I was trying to make, but I think that's far enough. I think that's bad enough. Oh yeah, no. The longest war in US history. Yeah, I mean that's a feat. That's a feat. That's the longest war in US history. And, you got people, the likes of John Bolton and Tony Blair over here, going on TV shows advocating for stopping in Afghanistan. And, they given I heard John Bolton or somebody give the example of Germany and Japan as the reason to keep troops there, because we did it with Germany and Japan after World War II.
We need to leave everywhere. We need to leave everywhere. Everywhere.
Except Ghani has fled the country with hundreds of millions of dollars. And I suppose he would be the Hirohito that we would keep in power, but we don't have that option to
No.
make the Japan comparison. But John Bolton has no right to, of course, he has a right to say whatever he wants, but he has no moral or intellectual grounds for any kind of argument with regard to Afghanistan, Iraq, any of the Middle East wars that he is directly responsible for.
Yeah, he can say whatever he wants, but he should be dismissed out of hand, period.
Right.
Anybody
Right.
with half a brain should be like, no. Whatever he says, let's do the opposite.
He's a war criminal.
I don't want people like John Bolton and Tony Blair talking to the children of this country or any country for that matter. And
No.
I don't want anybody holding them up as if they should be somebody that our children and our teenagers and our next generation should listen to, because these
admire.
people are, in my opinion, the worst type of people.
They're war criminals. It doesn't get worse than that.
I still cannot. I really can't. I cannot fathom how they are still being listened to 20 years later. There is absolutely no regret from these people whatsoever of starting these wars. None whatsoever. No thought for the millions of lives that have been lost as a result of them. None whatsoever. They only see things in a black and white sort of way, and there's no middle ground. There's no way that you can talk to people, or these people, or have a conversation. It's just, bomb, bomb, bomb in the case of John Bolton. And we all know that Tony Blair is, well, he should be in The Hague, if you ask me.
All of them should. All of them should. Anyways, you've been very generous with your time. I know we were only going to go 40 minutes and we went well over
I'm
that.
sweating like a madman. Look at me.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So do you want to, I know you're on TikTok and stuff like that. Is there anywhere else that people can find your work? Because
just go to my website, gordondimmack.com, and there you find it. I don't upload to YouTube anymore just because it's crap. But
yeah, it is crap. I need to get on TikTok. I'm so bad. I mean, I need to have my 10-year-old teach me how to TikTok because I don't know how to TikTok.
It's awesome.
Anyways, yeah, I'm sure it looks fun.
Like all the cool kids.
Yeah, it looks fun. But anyways, we'll link to all that stuff in the show notes so everybody can find Gordon's work. He's one of my favorite people. So definitely check that out. And thank you again for coming on. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you.
And, yeah, of course. And
thanks
everybody for watching, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you.